Good morning, everybody. We're letting people in. Our guest today is newly elected Senator for the 19th District, Charlane Oliver. How are you doing this morning, Senator?
Oh man, I am waking up thankful that I don't have a back-to-back-to-back calendar schedule today. It's been quite an exhausting week, but Friday and Saturday I've been able to get my energy back, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Good. Well, so the best is yet to come.
Maybe.
Yeah, the best is yet to come. So we got a lot of good questions for you. We've got a lot of people who are going to be joining on. I do have Council Member John Rutherford on. Welcome, Council Member, and we may have some other elected officials showing up. So as people who watch this show know, my first couple of questions right as we get started and letting people in are just talking about usually kind of what's behind your head. Now, I saw you have a sign that says equity behind it.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what that is?
Oh, so this is a photo that I made for all of our founding board members for the Equity Alliance. When they rolled off the board, I made them this photo. This is from our first Black Women's Empowerment Brunch that I planned back in 2018. And it's a picture. It's hard to get all of us together, and it's the one picture that we have together. And so I keep that framed, and I gave everybody one. And
it's very good. It looks like you've got a lot of awards back there. But the thing that I'm most interested in is behind your left shoulder. There's like a little bottle up there. What is that?
This?
Yeah. What is that? I can't see.
Where did I get this? It's a vase.
Oh, it's a vase. Okay.
Yeah, where did I get this? I think I got this in China. When I was working for Congressman Jim Cooper, he sent me on a congressional delegation to China, and this was one of my souvenirs that I brought back.
That is really cool. I didn't know that Congressman Cooper would send people to places like that. Otherwise, I would have talked to him more. So where did you go in China?
We were on a 10-day trip. We started out in Beijing and spent like a week there. And then we went to some of the rural provinces. I think it was called the Guizhou province. And we were up in the mountains with the really isolated communities where we really saw poverty in China. It really opened my eyes up to life there. And it was an amazing experience. So wouldn't change it for the world. And I was 3 months pregnant then. This is 2018. But I couldn't pass up that opportunity. It was life-changing.
Well, so tell me, I've never been to China. We have two sister cities in China, and I know one of them, which I think is Chengdu, is a big giant city. But I'm interested that they took the delegation up into the mountains. So what was that like?
Man, so we went to this village. There was no electricity. There was no like running water. And literally we're walking on like pathways that are this narrow along the side of the mountain. And there's this village. They dressed up in all their garb, metal garb that they designed themselves. They make all their fabrics and artistry themselves, and they celebrated us. It was a whole celebration to welcome us there, and they cooked for us. It was amazing to just be immersed in the culture of the Chinese. And there was a stark difference because when we were in Beijing, there was all this infrastructure. I took a lot of pictures of the buildings. I was fascinated with the architecture. There were just the design, and then their traffic and their roads and their subway system was so advanced. I would dare to say more advanced than the United States. And so I was very impressed by that. With over 1 billion people there, we didn't see not one accident, no road accidents or anything. But yeah, that really touched me being in the village, because it just made me so appreciative of what I have, even as an American, because they gave us their best. You know, they didn't have much, but they offered them what they had, and that really humbled me in that regard. So I enjoyed it.
That's so interesting. So this whole conversation today is just going to be about going to China. Forget the stuff you're doing with the being a senator. No, I think it's I think it's remarkable. First of all, that and I guess this might happen a lot, but they let the congressional delegation go into a place in China that wasn't just on a standard tour or on their standard route, and that
Right.
you got to see what we
Yeah.
see pictures of
Yep.
China. You got to see something that most people don't see.
No, it was it was very different from what you read in the news and what you see on TV. We got to see behind the scenes. Now, don't mistake it. We we didn't have security, but we were very much sort of monitored and in a controlled environment. We were treated like diplomats. We met with the embassy over there. We met with business leaders, the American Chamber of Commerce. Over there, we got to see how international trade. We met with reporters, American reporters from the New York Times, the Washington Post, to really get their front line perspective of what is happening and the news that gets sheltered from Americans. One of the big stories there was the sort of concentration camps that they have in some of the rural parts of China, where they are basically holding hostage certain religious groups. And I think it was certain Muslim religious groups. So they kind of stifle religious freedom, but also communication. There were certain apps that we couldn't get on, like Facebook and Instagram, none of that. They control TikTok, and there's WeChat was another like social media app we couldn't access. So it was pretty eye-opening, the type of way of life that they carry.
Very interesting. Well, so Charlane Oliver is our guest today, newly elected state senator to the Tennessee Senate, 19th district. Charlane has had lots of different things in her career, and we're going to get to that right now. I do again want to recognize Councilmember John Rutherford is on the call. I think Brenda Wynn was going to be on, but couldn't. She's our county clerk. We'll recognize some other people that may hop on. It's a beautiful day in Nashville. I've been out. It's a little chilly, but the sun's out. It's a good Super Bowl weekend. I assume I went to Super Bowl and Valentine's Day. I just went to the grocery store and bought stuff for both the Super Bowl and for Valentine's Day. That's
going to be my next thing when I get off this call, is head to the store. So.
All right. Well, they were starting to fill up when I was over there. Okay, so Senator, tell people watching who may not know you a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What have you been doing? Obviously, you work for Congressman Cooper. Your involvement with Equity Alliance. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I come from a very Christian working class family. I was raised in Little Rock, Arkansas. So I'm a Southern girl, never left the South, and, grew up poor and raised by a single mom. So my parents got divorced when I was very young, and had to work for everything I've had. But my mom really emphasized education. For me, academic excellence. So I graduated number 3 in my high school class, which got me on the radar of Vanderbilt University, a school I had never heard of at the time. I was in a program called Arkansas Commitment. And that's how I learned about all these schools that I ended up applying to that I never heard of. Vanderbilt being one of them. They offered me a pretty good deal and financial aid package that I couldn't turn down. So that's how I got to Tennessee, is going to Vanderbilt. And I went to University of Tennessee for my master's, got a public administration degree. I'm married, I've got 3 kids, and it wasn't until second semester senior year of my at Vandy that I did an internship with Bethlehem Centers of Nashville under Joyce Searcy, and really got a love for nonprofit work. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Is I wanted to go into the nonprofit industry, ended up working in that in government my whole entire career. I've never held a corporate job, and I'm actually proud of that. I have a heart to serve, and so I bring a lot to this role in terms of serving vulnerable populations and people who just need a leg up, who are in crisis. It wasn't until working at Meharry for 4 years that I really kind of found My calling, I was, you know, I had just had my second son, my first son, excuse me, and Trayvon Martin was murdered 2 days after he was born. And that really opened my eyes up to not just the charitable piece of the work that I was doing through nonprofits, but how justice really needed to be served. And I didn't question until then why, as a society, we put Band-Aids on really deep-rooted problems, and it's through policy change that needed to happen. And so that led me down a road of wanting to seek that change. And I saw where I didn't see where that was happening in the way that I felt it needed to be happening. And so the Equity Alliance was born. And I had been doing that. I've been doing that for the past 6 years. I founded that along with 6 Black women on the basis that voting and voting rights is the foundation of how we get secure our other rights. And if we're voting, we can make sure that we put the right people in office to adhere to what we need and the quality of life that Black citizens need in this country and in this state and in the cities. And so made some good headway with that. So we made a name for ourselves, fighting voter suppression, registered 91,000 people to vote out the gate in 2018, stopped some bad laws from happening in 2019. During COVID, we did a lot of rapid response around the CARES Act money, made sure that $22 million went into the hands of Black and Brown Nashvillians. We organized the George Floyd protests and also responded to the March 3rd tornado. So we were doing a lot during COVID while growing as an organization. I came on as the first executive director, and then after that, in 2020, we added about 12 staff. So, I'm really proud of what we built, and that foundation of community organizing is what propelled me into the state Senate office. I was named Tennessean of the Year in 2020 for that work that we did around the pandemic. And I saw it as a greater opportunity to serve. We were making really good results through the Equity Alliance, but I wanted to have greater impact on people. And it's always been about the policy for me. How do we change policy to impact folks? And so when the state Senate seat came open, got a lot of phone calls and made the conscious decision to run for the seat, and I won. So
let me ask you this. While you were doing a lot of the Equity Alliance work, did you ever think that you would run for office, or did you think that you were in many ways making more positive change by doing what you were doing, simply kind of not voting, but kind of pushing people to vote?
I was comfortable with making change from the outside. People don't really know this about me, but I'm a shy introvert. I grew up really, really shy. So I'm not this person who's always going to be like rah, rah, rah in the front, in the forefront. And so I was comfortable with that role of like just playing my position on the outside. I never looked at politics as a career. And so, no, I didn't grow up with a family that had money or connections in politics. I wasn't groomed for this. And I just saw it as another opportunity to serve. And here I am. But no, politics was not something I was actively looking for. My faith is what really grounds me and centers me. And I listen to that voice, the voice of God that from day one has always told me to tell your story. And I started telling my story through the Equity Alliance. That I always say the Equity Alliance was the catalyst that helped me find my voice. As someone who, experienced depression and sexual assault in a lot of different ways, and in ways that I felt silenced, I was giving people permission through the Equity Alliance to find their own voice. And it wasn't, it's just been this groundswell of God telling me and to do something, and I'm being obedient to that.
So tell people a little bit more about the Equity Alliance, and particularly the effort to get people registered to vote. And obviously, tremendous success in terms of getting people registered. And then I guess I had a follow-up question in terms of once you get people registered to vote, how do you get them to the polls?
Yeah, it's an uphill battle. So the Equity Alliance, we're a statewide nonprofit. Our mission is to build Black political power and to keep our government in check. So it's a twofold mission to make sure that we're empowering people through voter education, voter registration, and policy, to make sure that we're getting people involved in the political process, but also it's holding government accountable to what it says it's supposed to do and serving as citizens. So voter registration, that's just always been the first step for us. You got to start having meaningful conversations. It doesn't happen overnight. And our model is sort of non-traditional in the sense of people think that 2 weeks before an election, you're supposed to start having these conversations around what's happening on the ballot. And we take a year-round approach because we know that as Black people, we're very relational creatures. And we have to have that trust, built-in trust. And so year-round, we're building that trust with folks so that when it is time to activate, they listen to us as a strong voice. So that voter registration piece is just that entry point to start the conversation. Once we have you sort of have your attention, now we're going to try to build you up into whether it's leadership development or pushing you to the polls. But we try to speak on everyday language, speak to people in everyday language. I think that makes a difference. And try to connect the dots of like, yes, it's important to be registered, but the real game is being played when we get out and vote. But that does, we're in Tennessee specifically, our efforts sort of are counterintuitive because we can organize all day long. We can register people all day long, but there are policies in place, specifically in Tennessee, that cancel that out. Voter purging. It doesn't do any good if we have a 30-day election day deadline where people want to vote, but they missed the deadline, so they can't register in that election. Voter education, we don't have a lot of voter education efforts in this state. So those things work against us. And then there's other ways where we disenfranchise people through not allowing college students to vote because they can't use their ID, or people who are out of prison, who've completed their sentence, but we've made the process so stringent that they don't even try to get registered. So there are things and efforts intentionally designed that way to keep people depressed and discouraged from voting. And our Republican supermajority does a really good job of that, keeping people and their own voters at bay.
Okay, so assuming, taking from what you said, because I understand that, and different states have different policies that some are more liberal, some are more conservative, and some make it harder for people to, first of all, even want to register, and then if they're registered, to go to the polls and vote. Mm-hmm. How do you work in a system like that to make sure that people do register and they do go vote? Because it's so important. And Tennessee, our numbers are not very good.
Right.
And I remember, I remember going out and knocking door to door, and then also talking about people registering to vote, and people going like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get to it at some point. And it's like, no, you won't do that. So you've got to go register, and then people going like, yeah, I'm just not interested in voting. How do you work within a system that makes it sometimes difficult for people to want to go vote?
Well, we first got to understand that this is a long game, and results are not going to come overnight. If I go vote one time, that is not necessarily going to materialize immediately. And we got to understand how there are different factors that play into that. This state is a one-party rule, and people aren't motivated to go out and vote if, one, there's not a candidate on the ballot that they believe in. And so there's that piece. The short answer is coalition building. We have to be working in a coalition effort to make sure that we're talking to each other. The groups that are registering people need to be talking to the groups who are doing candidate recruitment, the groups who are in have an inside outside strategy. So we take Equity Alliance takes an inside outside approach, where if we're doing things sort of outside the building, where it's mobilizing people to action, we have to be communicating with our elected officials to make sure that our strategy aligns with what's happening inside the building. So it has to be a multi-layered, faceted approach, and we're just too disconnected. Whether it's the Tennessee Democratic Party is not connected with the caucus and what's happening and their goals there, and then stakeholder groups and people who believe in democracy and civic engagement have to have the same strategy that is happening, sort of not in a nonpartisan way, but also sort of in alignment with groups that are trying to get the right people elected. So it really is a layered approach, in my opinion, that has to be a long game for people to understand how we sort of turn the tide. But if people aren't motivated to go vote because they don't have a candidate on the ballot, especially in these rural areas, people feel unsafe to be on the Democratic ballot in some of these rural areas because there's retribution for that. So it's going to take a while for us to turn this ship, but we've got to have people doing the work, and it takes money.
Okay, so talk about everything that you just said in terms of getting people out there, getting people to understand what's on the ballot, what to understand the policy issues that are out there. And then coalition building. All right, so you're a newly elected senator, Democratic senator from Nashville, and you're walking into a supermajority, both House and Senate, Republican. Your ideas, I mean, some people are going to like your ideas, some people are not going to like your ideas. How do you go about making positive change in the way, I mean, this is America. We want people to vote. We want people to know what the issues are. How we do it. How do you start building that change?
I think by me running,
this is not an easy question. So
it's not. And, honestly, I'll be really transparent. What really, really frustrates me is that I feel like I am making great sacrifices for the team, right? For the greater good. But it can't just fall on the shoulders of the few to make that change. I get frustrated because it's people who sort of sit on the sidelines saying, great job, Charlane, love what you're doing. But it can't just be me. It's got to be the people who are on the sidelines clapping and cheering, doing their part as well for us to make that change. And it's not what I see. It's not enough people in the arena doing their part, expecting sort of the frontline leaders to shoulder all the burden. And we get exhausted. It's exhausting to try to carry that burden. So how do I make change? I have to find incremental wins. For me, it's one, giving people something to believe in. When I ran on an authentic message of showing people that I'm just like them. I am one of them, right? I have the same struggles that you have, in economic issues, whether it's, I am you, right? And so one, giving something that people can believe in, that they're sending to the legislature to fight. And then it's communication. For me, it's how do I make sure that I'm constantly in communication and educating people who don't really understand what's going on at the legislature, because we don't have a media apparatus that is truly, really telling the story of what's going on in that building. And it's a lot going on in that building that does not get shared. So for me, it's communication, it's showing up for my constituents. It's always being that voice in the room now, on committees, in caucus meetings, and on the Senate floor, to say, look, I know there's this body thinks one way, but there's another story being told in Tennessee that is being affected by this legislation, and it is incumbent on me to speak up. People didn't send me there to be silent, and I always have to remember that responsibility. That to me is change. It's again, it's not overnight, but it's continuing to push back in the face of white supremacy, to make sure that people understand that there's people here in Tennessee that don't look like them, that don't quite believe like them, but still believe in the betterment of this state and deserve our support and resources for this state. So I don't know. It's not a cute answer that I have for that.
Well, and I think, yeah, and you're right. I think you had talked about relationships. So tell me, well, let me ask you this. Okay, so you've been up there since the beginning of January, the second Tuesday of January when you got sworn in. You know, I've been up there. I've worked around the government for years up there. It's changed quite a lot. A lot of new faces, a lot of different attitudes. Have you? What have you felt like since you've been up there? Have you gotten to meet kind of everybody? Do you kind of know who everybody is? Have they? You know, I mean, part of the thing is that you know there's 33 of you that represent the people of this state.
Yeah.
How's it been so far? How do you feel? And then we're going to get into some specifics, particularly some of the stuff leveled at Davidson County. But
yeah,
tell me how it's been so far up there.
So far, I feel like I'm operating in my element, if that makes sense. Thankfully, I've had the experience of being at the Capitol, knowing how committees work through my, Equity Alliance and other advocacy efforts, that I kind of already knew the lay of the land and what I was walking into. Thank God I had that experience, because otherwise this would be a real shock, culture shock, but also just overwhelming burden where you could probably get it burnt out really fast. And I knew kind of this was going to be a different game than working from the outside. So I knew that building relationships is key. So I've been making intentional efforts to go to my Senate colleagues' offices and saying hello, speaking to them on the Senate floor, getting to know them, going to receptions and having just general conversations, because we all remember and have to remember that, yes, these are people and they may disagree with me. We may think a different way, but I still want to treat people with human decency and everyone's been nice to me. So I haven't had a bad experience so far. Everyone's been helpful. My colleagues on both sides of the aisle have been helpful with, like, this is how you get your bills filed. This is how you do a Senate resolution, like just showing me those different steps and being nice to my assistant. So I've had a positive experience so far. The schedule has been a little crazy to keep up with. People just pop in your office when you got stuff to do, but I don't know everybody still. I'm still learning people's names. It's taken me a little while to get to know some of the lobbyists in the building and different advocacy groups and stakeholders that are in the building. Me and Justin Jones have a bill to require lobbyists to wear badges, because you do need to know who's in the room, who's sitting in the audience. It makes a difference to understand who the players are in that building, because they blend in really good. They really do.
Well,
but I've had a positive experience so far.
Good. Well, I got on the elevator the other day, and I thought the way that you identified, because I don't know a lot of the new representatives and senators, so I thought that they had a little badge that they wore that was supposed to identify. But I got on the elevator with somebody the other day who had one that I thought was and I said, "You must be a new representative," and he said, "No, I work for the Secretary of State." So it's like, well, somebody needs to get these badges squared away, because I'm going to get confused as well.
Right. Yeah.
How many new senators are there this time?
Just 3. So it's myself, Brent Taylor out of Shelby County, and then Senator Adam Lowe. I forget where he's from, Calhoun, Tennessee.
Okay.
So there's 3 of us.
You won't get together at all just to kind of get to learn how the ropes work, particularly for new senators?
I'll tell you what was helpful. The University of Tennessee Institute of Public Service brought us to Knoxville first week of January, and we really got to spend time together as new legislators, House and Senate. There were about 22 of us that came to Knoxville, and they had this whole 3-day orientation that honestly the legislature didn't even give us. Like, so
Yeah.
I found it really, really helpful to just bond with them. And yeah, we see each other in the hallway, and it's like this like cohort that we have of like, even though we don't agree on the bills, but I can say hey to Jody Barrett, who's from Dixon, Tennessee. I can say what's up to Kip Capley, who's from Murray County. So Brock, Martin, like we kind of do have this like camaraderie of like we came in together and we're learning together. So
Well, and I would guess, I mean, so I was there in the days when people would go out to dinner at night, and people from both parties, and
mhm,
they may have argued over issues during the day, but they were friends,
yeah,
and that went a long way towards working on issues together
yeah,
and finding solutions that maybe didn't make everybody happy, but were in the best interest of everybody and came to some solution.
right.
Do
And
you do you sense that can come back, particularly if you're saying a lot of people who don't necessarily think like you do?
mhm. That tone is there in the Senate. I don't know so much in the House. Everyone keeps telling me and has told me, and I see it for myself. The Senate is much more cordial and civil, which I have to agree with that. A lot of members are a little bit older, and there's just a decorum there that and respect for people that you just it's not a rowdy, it's not as rowdy in the house. But yeah, we've had those moments prior to session, like back in November, December. We've gone to different conferences where we've had dinner with my Republican colleagues. So it's there. It's just few and far between because now the session has started, it's just hard to get that time in. Some committees, like certain committee chairs, have taken their whole committee to dinner. That hasn't quite happened on the committees that I'm on, but others have done that. So it's the camaraderie is there. You just gotta be really intentional about it.
All right. So tell me, what committees are you on? What have you been named to?
So I got put on all the freshman committees,
You didn't get
which
on.
I
You didn't
fully
get on
expected.
finance. You didn't get on the budget committee right away. Okay.
Man, I
What
just
did you get on?
flew through that one. I got on government operations
Uh-huh.
and energy and agriculture. So I don't have anything or agriculture related in my district, I don't think. But so that's gonna be a challenge learning all about farm. Like we had someone, the apiarist, come and talk about bees. I had no idea that bees was a thing that we needed to really, really hone in on and protect in this state. So I'm learning a lot, but it's kind of out of my element and wheelhouse. But I'm happy to be on GovOps. Senator Thelma Harper chaired that for a number of years, and it's got a lot of power that people don't really kind of underestimate. We have the ability to sunset any agency, board, or commission in the state and investigate, and we kind of have oversight powers of the executive branch. So I'm learning a lot through there. So they want every freshman to serve on that to kind of get a lay of the land of how state government works.
Well, and I think even with energy and ag, you learn things that you probably wouldn't have learned if you obviously weren't on that committee.
Right.
It benefits. It'll
Mhm.
benefit you in the long run, which is partially what all this is about.
Mhm.
Tell me, okay, so let's get into legislation. Tell us a little bit about the things that you're carrying this time in terms of legislation that you think um, you really are interested in. And
Mhm.
then we'll morph into we'll talk about what's happening with Metro and what you hear up there. So first tell me about legislation that you're carrying right now that
Yeah.
you're interested in.
Yeah, so you'll see about 35, 36 bills on my docket, but I really care about maybe 5 pieces of legislation. This year, I wanted to kind of play it safe and just learn as much as I could and just kind of get my feet wet. Several are messaging bills just off principle of being a progressive. Like, I just think these are things that we should be passing. But I also have some bills that I really care about. One being my consumer protection bill is Senate Bill 234. It is putting a limit on these homebuyer harassment messages that people are getting in Davidson County, whether it's a text message or a mailer to your house or someone showing up to your house. These people are trying to purchase your property and you didn't ask for this. It's unsolicited. So this bill would essentially limit the amount of times these companies can contact you. And so I'm working that bill, got a lot of good responses from it, got a lot of media attention and community feedback from it. I met with the Realtors Association. They love the bill. We're making some tweaks on it and talked to a few of the committee members that this bill will go through, and they like it as well. So I'm really optimistic about it, and I hope that it'll pass. I got another bill that removes the full 9-digit social security number from the voter registration form. Tennessee is only one of a few states that requires the full social, and it's a security identity theft issue that we got to make sure we're protecting people's information. And really would like that bill to pass to just only require the last 4 digits of your social. There's a bill that I'm sponsoring with Representative Love to require unspent TANF money. We're sitting on a big surplus of TANF funds, and to use some of that money to go to after-school programs. If you're an after-school program that's open until 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and you're located in a food desert, like in District 19, got a lot of food deserts, then you can use that money to provide a full meal to the children in your program, so that not just a snack, because right now they get a snack, and it just does not seem adequate for a child that's hadn't eaten since 11, 12 o'clock to have to sustain themselves till they get home after 6. So to provide that meal and really address the hunger issue in some of these areas. So I really like that bill. Trying to think what else. Obviously voting rights restoration is something I really care about. Probably won't pass this year, but I'm committed to try to work on that to make sure that people who have come out of prison, who are be fully restored into society to get their voting rights back easier than what we have right now. I'm trying to think what else off the top of my head. Those are some big ones. Next week, I'm presenting my first bill. It's a Juneteenth bill in Energy and Ag Committee. It would establish a Juneteenth celebration fund with the tourism department to allow different organizations to receive grants to provide cultural festivals across the state. So hopefully that'll pass as well. So that's a little bit of what I'm working on, just a hodgepodge of things. Most of my bills are election related, but next year you'll see me, be really intentional around my agenda. But this year I really wanted to champion women, children, and families, protect people's right to vote, protect the women's right to choose, as well as protect vulnerable populations. So that's kind of what I've got on my docket.
All right. Well, they always say that the first year sometimes it's better to learn and listen, and say things when you need to, but also learn from the veterans so that they I think come kind of to go, okay, well, you'll be showing up in like next year with a lot of stuff, but you're learning this year. And
exactly.
I think it's also one of the things I always learned was that they will teach you, rightly or wrongly, different things, but you'll learn how to do things, and you work with others, and then you start making some moves. Yeah,
I'm trying to strike a balance between, I came in as this like activist, progressive, like I'll carry that mantle and I will push when I need to, but also like I do want to earn respect, that I'm smart, that I actually know how legislation works, and I want to pass bills. I'm not just here to like rah and get in people's way, which we're going to do that when it's necessary. But at the same time, I am here to actually help people, and I want to do the work. And so I'm trying to strike that balance in my first year. And it's hard because they really coming after Nashville, and it's like the gloves is about to come off.
Well, okay. Well, let's talk about that. All right. So we had Caleb Hemmer was on last week, so we talked about it. So we went through some of the bills that have been filed. Obviously, there's a bill moving through the House right now to basically make metropolitan governments have either 20 or less, which means that our metro government, which has 40 members, would have to decrease if it passes. And there wasn't, depending on litigation and everything else. There's a bill dealing with the convention authority, which takes some of that money away that goes to pay back bondholders. There's the airport authority bill, which kind of takes it over, the sports authority bill. There's a bill about getting, I think, eliminating the community oversight boards.
Yeah.
There's other stuff coming. And then last week, there was the bill renaming part of John Lewis Way close to where Cordell Hill is, where your offices are, after former President Trump. There's a lot of stuff being thrown at Nashville. And, you know, we see it from the Metro Council standpoint and from the Metropolitan Government standpoint, but it's all in front of you guys. It's all the stuff that's being aimed at us, but it's being done through the state legislature.
Right.
Tell us about what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what are the possibilities, that type of stuff. And I will tell people, I mean, people who are watching the show know that it's supermajority Republican. They got votes. They can do this stuff.
They got the votes to just ram it all through if they really, really wanted to. And that's the most disheartening part about all of this, is they are doing this simply because they can. There's no other rationale for it. There's not even the business case for it. They keep saying Nashville is inefficient. Where's the evidence of that? We have a great bond rating in the face of all of the challenges we've had to face in the last 3 years. We're doing pretty well, and let us take care of our own house. We got this. And that's kind of the message that we are portraying back, is we don't need the state to come in and babysit us or take over. We know how to take care of Nashville. We've been doing this for years. And so, but we also got to really keep that magnifying glass on to say, wait a minute, this is a coordinated attack. And it didn't start here. We have to back up and look at the totality of the landscape of what's happening with these bills. Yes, these are retaliatory in nature because of the Republican National Convention that was voted down by the council. They were just looking for a reason, but there already have been efforts to take over, whether it was the redistricting of our congressional districts to steal a House seat in Congress. That was one effort. Before that, it was sending all their talking heads here to set up shop so that they can start organizing and building a Republican base in Nashville. Whether it's the preemption laws that were passed over the last 10 years of inclusionary zoning, impact fees, right to work. I'm trying to think of what the other ones were. The Community Oversight Board. There's been all these laws in place to kind of tie Nashville's hands so that we can't be the glowing city that we know we can be. And it's almost, they want us to fail. They want to be able to say, look at this, another Democratic blue city is failing, their crime is up, they can't manage themselves. We got to come in and do the work for them. But we know that's not true. We know it's not. This isn't a coordinated effort to take over Nashville and have this utopian city that they can call theirs, and that they can say, we've got control of the finances now, and we're the ones controlling the growth and driving the economy of the state. And they can go back to their base in these rural counties and say, this is us. We're taking credit for this. So it's to me, there's no reason for it. I'm very concerned of what this means for minority representation on the council. And I'm really also just frustrated with how the narrative has been about the number of seats, whether it's 20, whether it's 35 or what. Like, we don't need to get into the debate of what number it should be. We should be saying, no, regardless of the number, Nashville is the one that gets to decide this, not the state coming in and driving the conversation. So,
well, and so we've from the standpoint of the council, on the council bill, or with anything else that impacts the city, particularly with the council, yeah, the citizens of Nashville voted for this in, back in the early 60s. They voted again in 2015. They picked 40. And so we work with 40, just like you work with 33 and the House has 99. That's just what we do. We're used to 40. There are some people that think it's too big. There are people who thought it's been too big for a long time. But that's, what we've tried to do is get across the point that that's Nashville's decision to decide. The people of Nashville created this, and if they want to change it in our democratic society, that's up to them, not up to some other. I guess the question to you particularly, well, on all the bills is, what do you hear? I mean, this is difficult, and it's there's a lot of legislation out there, and the question is, I mean, what I would say is that they've made their voices heard. Can we get some of this stuff stopped? And then, if we can, how do we move forward so that we don't always have to be looking over our shoulder? That we can work together.
Yeah, well, I preface this by saying I'm still a freshman senator and building these relationships, and so still may not be privy to the inside conversations that are happening. But in terms of what I'm hearing,
I thought you would be on the inside already doing everything, but not yet.
I'm working my way through. I'm crawling in, but this Metro Council bill, we still don't know what chances it has. It is moving through the House. It has not been put on notice in the Senate. And that tells me that the Senate is where we have the best chance of killing this bill, because the Senate has been sort of the conscience of the legislature to say what we shouldn't be doing. So I would say we need to be having conversations with our Senate members about this bill, who are much more reasonable in that regard. It's going to pass the House. It will, but we'll see what happens in the Senate on that bill. The only other bill that I've really kind of heard about is the Representative John Lewis Way legislation. That's not going anywhere. Spoke to the sponsor about it the other day, and he doesn't plan on putting that on notice. So we can kind of breathe a little easy on that one. That's like one that we really don't need to be focusing our attention on. It's this.
Yeah, we had heard that, and that's a good thing. But there was a question, I think, over the week as we were taking questions, knowing that you're going to be our guest. This naming of roads, and you may not know all the details, but obviously the council named Fifth Avenue North after John Lewis, the civil rights activist and the congressman. And here comes the legislature, with a bill, hopefully not moving, that's going to try to rename it. Now, we have a President Ronald Reagan Way that is part of Second Avenue North. What we don't want to get into is a battle of naming streets after people. Do you know who controls this? I mean, I know that state routes are controlled by the state, but it wasn't necessarily a problem until recently, and now we're getting these battles. Do you know anything about this that you can tell us? That you can tell people about how maybe we can slow this down and just stop doing this?
Yeah, I'm not fully aware of the full process of how street namings work. Obviously, the state has control over state roads, and then the city has, city roads, which I really argue whether that particular street, Fifth Avenue, is a state road or not. But I think it also has to go through the historical commission. So that's where it could also be a roadblock to getting passed. So there's a few different hurdles it has to cross before a street can be named. So I'd have to look into that fully, but I'm not sure.
Well, it would be. I don't want us to keep battling, in terms of, if we're gonna try to get a lot of this stuff hopefully resolved, and everybody's gonna kind of learn how to live with each other. And what I would say is, and I think you said it as well, I mean, Nashville is one of the, maybe the key driving economic entity of the state right now, in terms of with the tourism volume and with the growth and the economic development. It is very important to the state. And so we don't want to, I don't think anybody, it doesn't benefit anybody to have it slow down. So I think we just have to keep moving ahead, and we have to keep figuring out how we get everybody kind of together on at least working together to keep that economic. And I mean, the city itself is such a wonderful place. All right. So anything else on any of those bills with Metro? I mean, obviously, I don't know if any of those bills are going to come your way on those committees. They're all government off. Not. Maybe the airport authority, maybe those things, because it is governmental operations, but it's not state operations unless they take it over, and then it would be operation. So do you think that stuff is heading your way, or do you know?
It wouldn't go through any of my committees. Trying to think, the community oversight board perhaps could come through GovOps, because their census has a statewide impact, but I don't think so. The street naming could potentially come through energy and agriculture, because we do a lot with like parks and tourism stuff. So, but I highly doubt it on that. So by the time it gets to me as a vote, it'll be on the Senate floor.
Okay. Right.
So my general sort of feeling about all of this, I really am concerned at how under the radar all of this is flying. Like I keep seeing articles, but how much does the everyday Nashvilleian really know what's going on? I sit in these committee hearings about the Metro Council bill, and all I see is like you and our lobbyists and sort of just kind of the normal folks. And I really wish we need to be making much more noise about what's happening and talking to our concerned citizens about this. It's a little too quiet for me because of the devastating impacts that these bills could have on Nashville, that it just seems like the people that probably should be speaking up or having conversations, where are they? Like, it's pretty silent right now. And I appreciate the work that you've been doing, testifying through committee, but like I said earlier, you shouldn't be shouldering that responsibility on your own. I question, since we have a bill about taking over the Sports Authority, Airport Authority, where are they on this? Like, where's the Convention and Visitors Bureau? Where are they on the Music City Center bill? Like, and I believe if we're waiting on these things to be put on notice to start going through committee, we're too late. We need to be proactively having these conversations to even convince them not to even put these bills on notice. So those are other strategies that I think from the outside, things need to be happening. On the inside, I believe that all the Davidson County legislators are united against this bill, but I think we could be doing a better job of meeting with our Senate and House leadership about these. And again, I think we're still on our heels about doing that. I did a press conference on Tuesday about this with IMF, NAACP, Minority Caucus, and some other groups, just to kind of build the conversation around how this would drastically impact minority representation. But we could be doing more. We could be doing more as a city to really elevate this.
And I think that's a good point from the standpoint of, I mean, one of the problems that there's so many different players in all this stuff. Trying to coordinate it can be sometimes pretty difficult, because you do have lobbyists representing Metro, you have the mayor's office, you have the council. There are 39 council members with different opinions. You got me, and you got you guys up on the Hill, and then you've got all these other various interests. But let me go back to something that I think is really important, and something that you may be very a very key player in for the next several years and maybe for the long run, and that is getting information out to people so that they do know. And what I mean by that is, if you go, most people probably have no idea what bills are on notice in the Senate committees next week or what some of the stuff is. Okay. So they have to depend on either somebody telling them or reading it in the paper, if they even get that anymore, or seeing it on the news, and then trying to figure out, what's an SB? What does that mean? It's a Senate bill. And it's going to this committee. What does that mean? And then by the time they look up, the bill's passed, and it has a significant impact. We have the same problem in the council. Okay. I mean, most people, if you're, sometimes you have a better shot because a lot of it's local and it's impacting them specifically and they know, but even then, a lot of people don't understand what's happening. We've got a little less than 5 minutes left. How would you fix that? How would you fix it? With your background in advocacy, how do we make this so that people really do know what's going on in the Cordell Hull building, in Metro? How do we do a better job of communicating information?
Well, I will say not to toot my own horn, but to my benefit, I also have a communications and PR background. So I do have that strength of knowing how to communicate. And I just released a newsletter this month, the Senator Source, as a way to communicate back into the community of what's happening. Yes, it's a monthly newsletter, so some things may be sort of after the fact, but follow my social media. Like we've got to do a better, job of utilizing social media as a tool, and get outside the building. I'm trying to start going back to these homeowner association meetings and churches and different community civic groups and start communicating back, like, here's what's happening in real time, because that education piece is key. It's not that people don't care. It's not that people want to be silent. They don't really just understand how all of it works together and where they fit in. And so you just gotta have to literally hold people's hands and bring them along and drag them along sometimes on how to do that. So that's where I feel like my strength is going to be, is just keep hounding it on what's happening, being active on Twitter, being active on Instagram, and meeting people where they are to communicate back what's happening. Maybe I need to start doing the weekly videos. I don't know. I've contemplated that. But I also have to be mindful of like what's realistic for me to actually do versus actually get my job done. So it's a challenge. But that education piece is so key. I put together a 1-pager of all the slate of bills taking over Nashville, and I handed that to all the different groups, and that they said this is super really helpful because they didn't even know about some of the bills. So just little things like that we can do is just educate people.
Well, I got your email the other day that said you had just started this new way of, it's like a newsletter. Is that what it's going to be? Yeah. So thank you for doing that. You have a lot of stuff on your plate, and we appreciate the fact that you're there, that you're advocating for all these different interests, and that you're advocating for Nashville. And we very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
We are out of time. Charlane Oliver, the new state senator from District 19, representing Nashville. Thank you for being our guest today. Good luck with all this. I know it's not easy.
It's not. We're a small minority, but we are going to do our jobs and push back and raise the alarm and get in the way. That's what John Lewis wanted us to do, and we're going to get in the way. So at least I am.
well, thank you for all your work. Thank you for being there. Our guest next week is Vonda McDaniel, who's the head of the Central Labor Council. That should be an interesting discussion. We keep this is fun. This has been fun for me. We've been doing this for a couple of years, and we get a chance to talk to people in a kind of an informal way with people watching, and people learn quite a bit. So anyway, thank you again. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Be safe. And
enjoy the Super Bowl.
We enjoy the Super Bowl, and we will see hopefully most of you all next weekend as well. Thank you, Senator. Have a good
Thank you,
week.
Vice Mayor. You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.